As you all know, innovation is becoming a key strategic driver for organizations. However, what we see is that most of our organizations are struggling to understand what innovation is, what is stopping them from being innovative, and how could they move forward into innovation. Taking a look into the current trends in innovation and also where those innovations will take us is interesting and also challenging for all of us. To talk about that, we have today with us Maren Cattonar from MIT. Please, Karen. Where's Karen? Maren? Hey, the floor is yours.
I think we were looking for the clicker.
Do you have the...
No, that's what we were looking for.
Whoop. Yep.
All right, I'm putting a timer on, too.
Now. Okay.
Gracias.
Welcome.
So I never thought I'd be talking in the same forum where bulls fight, but that is pretty exciting. I flew in from Boston this morning, and I'm excited to be in Madrid, so thank you. And I'm even more... Oh, he's forwarding. I'm even more excited to be talking about open innovation, because it is a driver for innovation all across industry, academia, and small businesses. So if I can figure out. So I just came from MIT, and we had our own conference this week called Solve. And what they were trying to do was an academic version of open innovation. And what this academic version of open innovation was bringing together thought leaders from all different disciplines, investors, philanthropic folks, academics, technologists, all to think about solving some of the world's problems. And so they focused on 4 pillars, one in energy with fuel, one in healthcare with cure, one in hardware and advanced manufacturing and make, and to look at the whole process of education. And so it was really interesting that that conference dovetailed with this one, because it was a different way of looking at open innovation from a solving perspective at the scientific and academic level, and then talking about how industry does open innovation. So as we saw already, I thought for a while open innovation was actually a buzzword. I came from an aerospace and defense company that's one of the Fortune 100 aerospace and defense companies. And about a decade ago, I remember working on charts for my boss on open innovation. He was the CTO. And I thought about, well, this term isn't going away, and it's because it's essential. It's essential for people in today's day and age to think openly, because they can't do it alone. And so why can't they do it alone? And this is a chart that looks kind of ominous, but small businesses, large businesses, everyone around faces a lot of the same challenges. You have challenges with finding a talented workforce with science, engineering, technology, and math. You have challenges with cybersecurity, and it affects everyone. And what we also find is that it's too much of a difficult challenge for one organization and one company to go in it alone. And we've also seen shifts in how large corporations handle their research and development to looking at this more open model. So what we've found is that there's a strategic need to actually look at how governments, industry, and academia all play together to make this a more robust open innovation model. And I put on some of the charts, this kind of systems of systems on the right, upper right-hand side, to highlight the fact that you have to think like a systems engineer to move forward in today's society, I think, in terms of a business. And so we're really focusing on how industry, academia, and government play together, because government sets the policies and is a driver for supporting innovation. In addition, industry plays a role in the fact that you want small businesses to operate strongly with large businesses, or for the small businesses to flourish. And then academia is going to be a source for a lot of the technology coming forward in today's day and age. So what are some of the strategic alternatives? I spent a couple years working in mergers and acquisitions, and to pick which technologies you wanted to target, you had to think about, well, what do you want to do with that technology once you find it? And so the alternatives are to buy a company, to invest in the company, in no particular order do I have these listed, to license a technology. Having come from the defense sector, we cared about licensing technology for a specific field of use. And the firms could still do what they wanted in a commercial setting. To do a joint venture, meaning that you're going to go in on an activity together, to enhance a relationship by working together on different programs, to subcontract as a large player to a small industry, and to collaborate in a number of different ways. And so these, I consider them the more traditional mechanisms, and they're still what is necessary. And open innovation can be defined in many ways. This is more of a, I'll call it US-centric chart, but I think that there's a lot of applicability globally in the sense that as a big company, you care about what can you innovate internally, and what ideas are you missing? Because I was an engineer, I don't consider myself one anymore, but when you graduate from school with an engineering degree, you think you can save the world, and you come up with all of these great ideas, and as you start to work in a big company, you're focused on doing one or two particular tasks. And so industry overall can look at how can we reinvigorate the employees to think creatively again. Another one is to look at universities, and MIT is constantly called feeding technology to industry, to spin-outs for licensing opportunities. And then to look at how government plays a role. In the US, there are a lot of government laboratories and research centers, as there are across Europe, that really act as a pillar for many drivers in technology. And then to really think about how you can strategically play with small businesses to develop those discriminating technologies and capabilities that will bring you forward. So this was really interesting to me because when you think about it, it's not the traditional world anymore. And big industries aren't ruling everyone's turf. Small companies, or companies that I'll call non-traditional, are entering the markets in very unique ways. We had a forum on how do you bring the internet to all of the people in the world. This was part of the SOLVE initiative. And we had a speaker from Facebook talking about the fact that they have developed an unmanned aerial vehicle, a UAV, that's exclusively focused with solar power as its energy source to stay on, platform, on course at 60,000 feet. And what do they want to do with it? They want to beam down communications. And you think, Facebook. I just friended someone on Facebook, and now they're building UAVs, and they're building different communication systems. So you have these non-traditional players going after the traditional spaces with new and creative ideas. And then we have small businesses that are able to enter into markets that we didn't traditionally think were possible, which is actually a good thing because I think it fuels more fire. And the reason why I have the term usurp in there is that for a period of time, the large companies saw this as a tremendous threat. And so they see it as these other players taking market share away from them. And I think that there's an opportunity for this greater collaboration. And so you ask, why are small businesses able to do this? It's because they're focused on one niche, typically. They're able to be disruptive in the technology, but then a defense term is actually called ilities, right? So it's trainability, maintainability, cost, reliability, affordability. And it's thinking about all these things that the small businesses are able to do a better job in some cases than the larger companies. And really what it comes down to is the fact that they're more agile. They're not afraid to fail. They're out there. They're taking risk. Anyone who's an entrepreneur in this audience is taking a risk. You could have gone to work for a large company, but you're going and you're proving to the world that you can take something to market and do a great job of it. And then in addition to that, it's the culture, right? You become a family in some ways when you're in an entrepreneurial company. And so with the larger companies, there are challenges that are faced in working with small businesses. And I think it's important for the small businesses to fundamentally understand what some of these challenges are. And there is this, I experienced it a lot when I was working on radar technology, is this, we tried it 30 years ago, it didn't work, and it's not invented here, it can't work. And the fact of the matter is that mentality has to go. And so the not-invented here aspect of thinking in large firms is not the way to go. Then you have to think about the legal interactions. How do you protect your intellectual property as a small business? How do you protect your interests when you're working with a large company? There are corporate obligations. As a small business, you can look to the long term. Large businesses do look to the long term, but they also, many of them are publicly traded and have to report to their shareholders. So there's a lot of processes too that slow things down, and so that's going back to the agility of a small business. And if we can find better ways to marry the two, then I think we have a really interesting story for success. So shifting gears a little bit and talking about ecosystem, this is one of those systems of systems charts. MIT is based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and up the river is Harvard, and across the river is one of the best hospitals in the world. And many of the Fortune 100 and 500 companies have set up research and development shops in the area. And we have people who are investors and serial entrepreneurs. And what you find is that when you look to stand up something, the ability to do it in a robust ecosystem, I think helps to have you flourish a bit. And one of the key things is to understanding the timeline technology takes. Startups and small businesses say, I've invented this widget. Look, it works. Well, it also needs to be ruggedized. It needs to be thoroughly tested. It needs to be proven that it's safe and secure for someone to use. And those extra development costs aren't something that a small business thinks of. And so the key is to really understanding the flow of how technology has evolved and what it requires to make it a success. And one of the key things is to understand that it usually takes longer than you think. But in looking at that at the same time is looking at the academic setting and portending that to industry and small business. We have an open culture where people are willing to talk to one another. There's this view of taking risks. We're looking for technologies that are application-oriented. We are entrepreneurial, and we set clear rules. And this is important when small businesses and industry collaborate and talk with one another, that they establish clear rules on what they have in expectations in getting out from the new relationship. Is it money? Is it working collaboratively on developing a technology? Is it finding a new source of input for your technology? And I think that's very important to always set the standards up front. And MIT has this robust ecosystem of, I'll call it a tornado of spinning out new companies and new technologies. And many of them are Fortune 100, well, one on there is a Fortune 100 company now. But what you find is that it's in all different disciplines. And sometimes you have to think about the fact that in open innovation, you may not, as a large company, want to target your traditional small companies. So you may target areas that maybe wouldn't make the most sense to you initially, but have a solution that would really help in a number of different business areas. So just to give an example of how industry, this is kind of a traditional model, works with academia and then also works with small businesses. Within my center, I am responsible for funding technologies in the laboratories of MIT, helping them over the course of 1 to 3 years to reduce the technology and market risk to spin out companies. And so one project that we funded was a little bit like science fiction. There was a professor who came to us and said, I have this great idea for energy storage, and it's going to be with molten metals going back and forth, and you can make it to grid scale. Everyone thought he was crazy, but we said, let's place a quick bet on him, $50,000, see what you can prove. He proved that it works, that it was feasible. And then from that point forward, the technology got additional monies out of MIT for its energy initiative. And then it got funding from the Department of Energy because it had a really well-established proof of concept. So why am I bringing this up for an open innovation discussion? It's the fact that Total, the French energy company, they said, this is really, really interesting. We don't care about this aspect, but we would love to license this technology if it matures for the field of use in a different area. And so Total invested in the technology while it was in MIT. It furthered itself along so far that it decided that they needed to spin out a company. And then Total became an investor, the Gates Foundation became an investor, and now they're at the point where they're very close to actually producing their first project. And this is several $1 million later, several years longer than they had intended, but it's a model that works in terms of getting to know the technology fast and early, investing in them or investing in the people, and then following it through. And I think that this will prove out to be a very interesting project overall. This is a little bit of a different spin. This is one of our more recent spin-out companies called Julia Computing. I think it's really cool. These are some fantastically brilliant mathematicians that have designed a new programming language. And this programming language actually can do things much faster. And you talk about big data. This is highly applicable to big data. And what we're looking at is this technology that's software-based. They've created this new language. It's adopting new players and new entrants. And they're keeping it open. So it's an open source code. So anyone who's interested in software can look at this. The big companies can look at Julia and say, hey, can I use this to do big data analytics on my electric grid technology? And the answer is yes. And it's a very interesting model in the sense that it reduces the time to development. And so what they're trying to say is that with this new programming language, it's so agile, it's so adept, that they can actually work on traditional, I'll call it iron materials, the big machinery, and also work on your smartphone towards this Internet of Things. And I think this is just another good example of one of the spin-outs that's relatively early stage, but it's a different form of open innovation in the sense that they have opened their kind of source so that everyone can use it and adopt it. And that's a different model for open innovation that I wouldn't call it as the best way to monetize, similar to the previous one, but it's something to get technology out into the market. So since I have 31 seconds, the key takeaways are companies cannot be complacent. The world is dynamic. It's changing. There's a tremendous amount of challenges and threats out there. The systems of systems approach to thinking is essential, that you can't go in it alone. You have to think about your ecosystem. You have to think about the partners that you want to work with, and you have to think about the overall market. Leverage all types of models for open innovation that you can think of, because I will tell you, your competitors will be doing that if you're not. And then focus on the people, because that's the most critical element. And as a small business, find your niche. So, gracias.
Yeah, thank you, Maren, for these super interesting insights into innovation. Please keep here with us for the panel. I want to invite now to join us for the panel the following people. We have from, well, in fact, Juan Garrigosa, you already know him from Endesa, Alberto López-Oleaga from Ferrovial, Borja Breña from Telefonica Open Future, and we also have with us a couple of real innovators, Ricardo Herranz from Kineo Mobility Analytics and Agustín Tena from Synapticon. I would like to start asking you, the corporations, about how you are focusing innovation today. Because people used to think, when we talk about innovation, people used to think about service or products, but there are other very different ways of innovation within the company. I would like to ask you where your companies are focusing innovation today. Maybe we can start in order for this question.
All right. For us, innovation is a methodology, first of all, that starts from the challenge to the projects, and from the projects to the value. And it's important, first of all, to know what are your challenges. Focus on them, work on them, not only with open innovation, but also using the internal capabilities of the company. Fully agree with your final conclusions. People are the key. Internal employees, external teams, companies. We at Endesa are taking advantage of all the employees' ideas with our internal ideas campaigns that we call ADOS Market, and also with our open innovation community, with different partnerships with big suppliers, with main universities, and also with entrepreneurs that are key for us. They are very fast, they are flexible, and they are always with the very last technologies. So we can develop with them different products and services that could take a lot of time if we do this with some other large companies.
Well, in our case, I am head of innovation in Ferrovial. You know, in few words, that Ferrovial is we call it a global infrastructure management company. and we deliver highly complex projects or services. For doing that, innovation is a key enabler. What we do is to align the innovation process with the strategy process and the HR process as well, as long as people and culture are critical for innovation, for innovating. And of course, what we try to identify is the challenges and the priorities of the different businesses. We review these challenges and priorities every 6 months, and by doing that, we identify projects, we identify partners, and we deliver solutions for solving the challenges. This is, in few words, the model we have.
Okay, and maybe Borja for...
Thank you, Aurelio. So my name is Borja Ureña, and I work for Telefonica Open Future, which is the department of open innovation in Telefonica. And for us in Telefonica, all the innovation has to be aligned with all the strategic objectives. So first and foremost is obviously helping the client, and then helping the people that make Telefonica. So we have innovation not only for products and services, but also for the processes inside. Telefonica, for example, right now we have rolled out a HR software process. We also obviously invest in infrastructure, technology, so things that people don't see, but obviously is at the backhaul of all the products that we give out. And just to give you a quick example of another innovation that is transparent to the client, but is helping them. We had about 2-3 years ago, 30,000 software applications that were legacy from like decades ago, and now we're trying to bring them down to 2,000. So everything is streamlined and everything works better.
Thank you very much. Just to finish this first round of questions where you introduce what you are doing, I would like to ask you, our innovators here, the guys that are disrupting everything on the stage, Ricardo and also Agustín. First of all, I would like you to introduce to the audience what your company does, and I also include the first question for you is one of the first challenges or the biggest challenges is most of the companies, the startups face when they start is selling to big companies. What's your experience about that?
Okay, so can you hear me well? Yeah?
Maybe our colleagues can turn up. Can you
okay?
hear him?
Can you hear me now?
No?
Okay.
Guys, speak now?
Hello?
No.
Yeah, it's okay now.
It's okay.
Okay, so my name is Ricardo Herranz. I'm
No, it's
no?
not. I think it's not working, maybe.
Oh.
Well, then I will jump to Agustín.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
Okay.
you solve it?
Yeah. Hello, do you
Yeah.
hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay. My company Synapticon is established in Stuttgart, Germany, and we are changing the way things are built up. We came out with this system-on-chip architecture, which is super modular and flexible, and we build up cyber-physical systems. So quickly and dirty, you want to build up a robot, and we put together all the pieces of software and pieces of hardware, which is like Arduino, but way more sophisticated. And in 1 week, you can have the electronics of your robot running, and your prototype is done. So we are shortening the time to market for industry and other fields, but industry also.
And what about the experience of working for industries
Yeah.
at the beginnings?
Regarding that, I think when you really start to build up relations with industries, when things start to get harsh and tough, and when you really start to get the feeling of doing something important. And you know, the only way, the fact is, if you want to get contracts with industry, you need to deliver faster than the competitors, cheaper, and things need to work at least as good as the others. So that sounds maybe easy, but it's not. And yeah, that's the challenge. And when people get on their nerves and things start to stress out, and maybe some people start quitting, and you start hearing screams and yells on the headquarters. But yeah, that's how it is, I think.
Thank you. Now it works.
Okay.
Now your
I think
mic.
it works now.
Okay, great.
Okay. So my name is Ricardo Herranz. I used to be an engineer, but not a very good one, so I became an entrepreneur. I am co-founder of a technology company called Nomon, which we created 3 years ago, developing simulation and decision support systems.
Can you speak a bit louder?
Yeah, simulation decision support systems, mainly for the transportation sector. And more recently, beginning of this year, we launched a second company called Kineo Mobility Analytics, which is somehow the reason why I'm here today. What we do at Kineo is pretty simple. I think the name is it's pretty self-explanatory. In a way, we do data analytics about human mobility. What we do is collecting and analyzing anonymized geolocation data from mobile devices. Maybe we get mainly this data through private contracts with mobile network operators. In the case of Spain, we have a partnership with Orange, for example. We are now negotiating partnerships with other operators in other countries. And what we do is mining this information, analyzing this information, blending it with other data sources, and reconstructing people's activity and mobility patterns, which is an information that is then translated into some actionable insights for companies like Ferrovial operating transport infrastructures, for travel agencies, for whoever is interested in information about activity and mobility of the population. So there's a different range of applications. An example application is, for example, monitoring what happens at an event like this, where people are coming from, where people are going after the event, how they are impacting the transportation system in the city. So this is what we do. Regarding the second question, we have somehow a pretty simple and, let's say, compelling value proposition, because the kind of information we are offering is something that was traditionally collected mainly through surveys, which is something expensive, which is something time-consuming. You get partial information. You don't get information updated with the frequency you would like to get. So it was pretty easy for us to build, as I say, a value proposition for big corporations, big companies like Ferrovial, or for public administration, which are another market segment for us. But the challenge, I think, is to get started these first projects. Even if the value proposition is clear, this is changing the way things have been done in the industry for decades. So it's more about changing processes, and I think in this sense, the kind of pilot projects we are now running with companies like Ferrovial, Cintra in this case, is very useful to learn, let's say, to develop some mutual learning, and not only validate the technology, but also learn how to integrate this new data into, let's say, decision-making processes for a transportation company, for a travel agency. So I think that the challenge is not the development of the project itself, which is rather easy. It's what you need to do before, where with big companies where procurement processes are slow, where you need approval from many departments, to launch pilot projects which should be relatively agile, which are reduced in scope. And so I think the challenge is getting things started, I think.
Start again.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for your introductions to your companies and how you are involved into open innovation. But I would like to ask you now, because open innovation as lean startup or customer discovery and all that kind of things are beautiful words, easy to say, not so easy to implement. So I will ask you, and also you, Maren, from your experience, what are for you the pros, but even more important, the cons of this model of innovation? Feel free to answer or even to discuss. I just want to open the talk. I don't know.
I can go last.
I will. Guys, could you leave the mics open? Yep.
So I think one of the cons actually is the fact that you hire people to do certain jobs, and if you promote too much innovation internally, it's now counter to what I said before, but it actually takes away some of the focus from what their actual objective is for why you're employing them. So you have to internally think about how you would structure an opportunity for innovation internally that isn't, I think, a traditional model. So that's a challenge that I think corporations see.
For me, a con could be to enrich the proposal with different point of view. Sometimes if you were on your ecosystem...
can you hear him? In the back?
Hear us?
No? Maybe you can speak a bit louder.
Juan? Yes?
Yes, yeah, I think now it's better. Yeah, thank you.
Well, what I was saying is one of the cons is to work against of that. No, it's if we involucrate the startup, for instance, in our internal processes, would be very, very bad for the startup because we at the large companies have very strictly processes. We have to take decision, different people. We cannot involucrate the startup in this process because if not, we are going to stop them. So we have to take advantage of the main advantages that they are proposing, the flexibility. They are very, very fast, very adaptive, very fresh. So we can not involucrate in them with our internal processes. It's like if we have to take a couple of barbells completely independent and only mix with some specific employees to take ideas from them, also to enrich the final proposal with the best of the two worlds. So we have to take the best of each of them.
Well, from my point of view, we see more pros than cons, no? In this open innovation approach that we have. I would say that we are using in Ferrovial in working in an open world because at the end what you are building highway, or you are managing an airport, or you are providing urban services, you are in an open world. You are in the middle of many players, agents, subcontractors, etc. And your role is to manage all of them. Then I think that our innovation approach is just to move in the culture that we already have. No? I would say more than cons, that is from my point of view, is critical to be in an open world, in an open innovation scheme, very selective and not losing the focus. And try to look the best universities, technology centers, startups, according to that fit with the way of doing things, that fit with your challenges, and that complement your internal capabilities. No, this is key.
Well, actually, I hadn't heard about open innovation when I created my company, but seems to me from what I've heard today that we've been doing more or less open innovation for the past 3 years. It was in the very beginning, or we had it from the very beginning, this idea of collaborating with the different agents of the value chain. I mean, we're a small company, we're 8 people now, and we don't have internally all the capabilities to develop the kind of sophisticated projects we are developing with companies like Ferrovial. So it has always been, since we created the company, in our spirit, this idea of collaborating with high-class universities, research centers on the one hand, and also involving end users on the other hand, also from the very beginning of the development process. So I see, as the other speakers, I see more pros than cons. If I have to mention one con, it's probably the different perspectives between big corporations and startups regarding timescales, regarding how much you can wait to launch a project, how much bureaucratic processes you can deal with, and also, of course, but I think that's part of the game, the asymmetry in the relationship with big corporations. But that's something we have to deal with. But that's something that is always there in this kind of open innovation schemes, of course. So it's not everything is great.
Good, thank you. So, obviously I agree with all my fellow panelists, and being part of the department in Telefonica that fosters open innovation, we obviously think that there are more pros than cons. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. So the first pro is that, no matter how many intelligent people there are in a company, imagine like 140,000 people in Telefonica, very good engineers and professionals. There are 7 billion people out there, so obviously by statistics there are tons of good ideas outside. So hey, open up, get some good ideas to the inside. This is a not invented here syndrome, so obviously you need to beat it right away. So the second thing is the fact that people in big corporations, you cannot fail. I mean, you guys need to understand. I mean, you usually complain that the processes within big corporations are cumbersome, they're long, but you cannot fail. You have a brand which is very reputable. So basically, you cannot make, if you fail twice, you can send your company down to bankruptcy. So you're the guys who can fail. You guys are like showing up and sprouting, and you're the guys doing innovation. But we also do innovation inside. But don't forget this. I mean, we also innovate inside big corporations. The issue is that to bring the innovation to the market, we need to be very, very sure. So the good thing of innovating outside and bring things in is that, yeah, people can fail, but the way we bring it in, you need to make sure that it's not going to damage, tarnish the brand. And then the third thing that I would like to point out is it's not a con, but it's a reality. You're dealing with people. I mean, we're talking about big words like open innovation or whatever. This is all words. At the end of the day, we're talking to people. No matter what the director of innovation in Telefonica, Endesa, Ferrovial say, at the end of the day, there's a manager who has to sell, who has to get his KPIs to get his bonus. Okay? So basically, and if he actually makes an issue or makes a mistake, if he gets something right, his director will get the reward. And if he makes a mistake, he's sacked. So basically, we need to understand that we're dealing with people. Okay? So this is the only con of this kind of way of innovating.
Well, yeah, Aurelio, I also, do you hear me? Do you hear me? Hello? Yeah. I also agree. I think there is nothing wrong about innovation, but it is true that it might sound that we are on the age of innovation. I slightly disagree with that. People is afraid. Many people have nightmares with the crisis. Where I come from in Germany, the industry has really strong fundamentals, and people, I think Borja got the point. They are afraid of losing the company. They cannot fail. They are really afraid to fail. And doing innovation becomes really hard sometimes. Really hard. I mean, for example, just to give an example, in the aerospatial industry, they're using the chips from the 90s. So imagine how hard it can become to innovate in this field, in this industrial field. So that's the only drawback that I see. That is really hard, but that's it.
But don't get me wrong. I mean, this is, can you hear me, guys? Yeah, okay, so don't get me wrong. This is the way to go. I mean, open innovation is basically nature. It's to have silos within a company, to have like a close, not to have any sharing of information. That's the old, previous centuries, the industrial revolution way of doing things. I got my patent, I cannot share with anybody. It's going to be mine. To be honest, the world is not that way. Nature works like tons of little, cells have different mutations, and then some of them fail, some of them progress, and those that progress actually bring the innovation to the rest of the ecosystem. So you definitely need to do it. I mean, this is the way forward.
Okay, thank you. You have bring on the table one very interesting aspect, Borja, when you talked before about talent. You say we are doing open innovation because talent is outside, which is completely true. You will never have the best talent for everything within your company because you get what you have at a certain point, at a certain time, and in a certain place. But and yeah, the startups are the innovators. But how long can you take this flag of being innovator within a startup? How do you keep in being innovator? How do you keep attracting talent or managing talent and being different because you are innovator?
Yeah. Well, first, I'm not necessarily sure that all startups are innovators, but modestly we think we are, of course. And that's, I cannot answer the question, I think, because we have a short trajectory, so we've been there for a short time, and so far we've done pretty well, I think, in attracting...
Have you thought about it?
In attracting talent. But I can share some thoughts about it, yes. I think this is pretty much about creating, I mean, this is pretty obvious what I'm going to say. It's about creating a place where people want to work, which is intellectually stimulating, which offers a nice environment to work. And this is, I think you can do this at two levels. You can do this at a more formal level through your quality system, processes, procedures, fostering interaction between your strategic planning, your research and development department, your business areas. But also, and above all, you do that, I think, at a more informal level by creating, let's say, a company culture. And my feeling is that this is very much determined by what you do during the first months of life of your company. I think company culture is highly path dependent. It really depends on what you do during the first year of the company. It strongly depends on the first 2, 3, 4 people you hire. So I think you have to put a lot of effort on that. And then, of course, it's about keeping, as I said, it's about keeping an environment which is intellectually stimulating for people and investing, I think, considerable amount of effort in selecting good people. I don't think there is a big secret in that.
I have a last question. Maybe you, Juan or Alberto, maybe both can ask me this question. Is corporate venturing is going to boom in Spain and it's already becoming a reality. Do you think the companies are ready for that? Maybe Borja has answered it in some way before about this question. But are your companies ready? Are your board members ready for that kind of ventures?
Okay. Well, in Ferrovial, we have analyzed that. I mean, we think corporate venture is an important tool for developing your innovation ecosystem. But having said that, I have to say that we don't have a corporate venturing. We decided not to have that, in the sense that of a traditional corporate venturing, if you want. I mean, we don't invest in equity in the startups. But what we have developed is an approach for startups that we put on the table challenges for them. We collaborate with them. We provide business expertise, and which is very important, we think we provide challenges and infrastructures where we can be able to develop the solutions, to test the solutions, etc. And I think that in a startup, of course, money is critical, but probably is much more critical to test the solutions at an early stage. And by doing that with a big company that has real challenges, real problems, we think would be very useful for them. No? This is what we are trying to do with Kineo. We make agreements with around 20 startups per year. No? And Kineo is one example, but there are many, and this is what we offer today. It's not a traditional corporate venturing. We are still thinking about the advantages of doing that, but already we are working in this scheme.
But some money is useful also,
no? No, of course.
Maybe Juan, you want to add something?
In our case, we have some lesson learned because we didn't run. We didn't run because we come into the capital of some startups. And we didn't run because at the end we gave them the worst of our work. The worst of our procedures. We are very big. I mean, large corporations are designed to offer services to millions of customers. So we can fail, of course, but very fast. So everything is very well. We have strong procedures, very fixed everything. So when we come into the capital of some startups, we translate the worst of these procedures. Also, I mean, some operative things like consolidating the financial statement of the group. That is something a nightmare for the startup. Also, the startup that could be 2 or 5 or 10 guys suddenly became a large corporation because a large stakeholder owns more than 30%. So now these startups cannot get public funds or cannot apply for subsidies. So it's like if we were giving them the worst of our work. So we have learned a lot. No? For instance, Telefonica has a subsidiary company with different rules. So maybe this is the way. New rules with more quickly, more fast, more simple, check decisions, the consolidation of the financial statement. So at the end, open innovation is about to fail, of course, but it's about to learn about the best of the other. It's about teamwork, working together with other companies. So these are part of the lesson learned that we take from our experience.
Good. Well, I think the question was about whether we were ready in Spain to do corporate venture capital. And in my opinion, people in the industry, people in big corporates know that the way forward needs to be, innovate, whether openly or internally. But I don't think that they're ready to accept the things that they have to forego before accepting the real way of innovating. So actually, in the venture capital world, the venture capitalists mock a little bit the corporate venture capital because they say it's not real. And they obviously, they're not, it's partly true. So they have two reasons to say that. Number one, corporate venture capital hasn't produced any big unicorn that people know. There's no Airbnb or Dropbox, because when you invest in a company which is small, you basically acquire it, all right, and you turn it into a business line. So when it gets to the consumer, it's part of a Microsoft, it's part of Telefonica. So they don't, people out there don't know that this actually came from a venture capital activity, all right? So this is something, in favor of CVC, or corporate venture capital. On the other hand, they were right when they said that it's not real, because the people leading the decisions of corporate venture capital are mostly directors, and they take decisions politically. No, they don't take decisions based on the features that they really need for the products or in the KPIs. So at the end of the day, do you think that in Spain, a big director is having lots of power, is going to it's going to stop himself from saying, oh, I want to invest in that company? No, they don't. Here in Spain and many other countries in Europe, which is different to the UK and England or the US, they actually say, I like this company for whatever reason. My mate told me the director of this competitor has invested in that one. I mean, decisions are not taken in a way that the venture capital really does, okay? And the second thing, once the decision is made, it really goes down to the people. In venture capital, you have to give a little bit of money, and then if it doesn't work, you're just out. If it works, give you more money. In the big corporations, it's all about, power that you have today in this budget for 2016, right? So you need to hoard as much money as you want, as you can get. And then you say, oh, I've got this project, I'm going to invest 10 million. Actually, it doesn't need 10 million. You just need 50 grand for the next 6 months. And then next year, another 100,000. But then today, you're doing your budget for next year. So the way the budgeting is done in corporations is completely the opposite to what the venture capital method is. So this is the second problem that corporations have. So directors not keeping themselves from orientating the decisions, basically imposing their micromanaging decisions. And the second is just the internal way of corporations, how corporations work.
Okay. A lot to learn still I know. A lot to learn still for the corporations about venture capital. Thank you very much. I guess you all have questions, but I have been told, can we have questions? No? Yes? No? Okay, one question, right? Okay.
Yeah, I was kind of intrigued. I was thinking that the panel was being a bit unfair on corporate VC, and I have to admit we've got a slight vested interest because we track corporate VC, but there's a number of examples of unicorns that have been backed by corporate VC, so LinkedIn, Palantir, I'm sure Telefonica's got some in its own portfolio kind of thing. So I was just sort of thinking there could be a bit more nuance, that corporates aren't quite as dumb as they were in the venture world. So is there a sort of 1990s thinking, and actually some corporates are figuring out how to do it right?
Sorry, I actually understand the question.
Okay, what I was wondering is do you think that the corporates, I know you were saying just now that the corporate VCs have, I guess, work to a corporate agenda and that kind of thing. Do you think that the there are corporates that are actually doing VC well, or do you think it's
of course.
generally, yeah?
Of course, there are corporates doing VC well. We are doing it well. We're Telefonica. I'm in the Department of Venture Capital within a corporate. I'm a CVC guy. I'm telling you from the inside perspective how things are doing well that people can't see, but then other things we do not as well. Yeah. So basically, I'm being like honest.
I think real quickly you should also look at Cisco as an example. So there are many companies that have grown to be large companies because of numerous acquisitions, and that all stemmed from doing some corporate venturing work early on. So there are unicorns, they're just not as pronounced.
Okay.
Sorry,
Thank
there's
you.
more questions. There's more questions, but there's no more time. So Aurelio is going to close. And anyone who wants to ask the panelists afterwards, behind, backstage or side stage, thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks to you guys.
No, it's okay.
Well, thank everybody.
Let's jump
Thank
into the next.